Let's talk about René Descartes. You definitely know him for I think, therefore I am, but what you might not know is that this giant of philosophy had a master plan. He wanted to cap his entire life's work with one final masterpiece, a perfect, rational guide to living a good life. There's just one tiny problem. He never actually wrote it. And the reason why, well, that's one of philosophy's greatest unsolved mysteries.
So for Descartes, philosophy was this incredible tree. The roots? That's metaphysics, the study of reality itself. The trunk? Physics. And all the branches were the other sciences. But the final, most perfect fruit, the thing the whole tree was designed to produce, that was morality. This wasn't just some side project for him. It was the ultimate goal, the last degree of wisdom. His entire system was built for this.
Which brings us to the big question, right? Why would this brilliant, systematic thinker get all the way to the end and then just leave the most important part blank? Was it just an accident of history, or was there something much, much deeper going on within his own ideas?
All right, so in any good investigation, you start with the most obvious explanations. So for our first step, we're going to treat this like a simple cold case and look at the external factors.
Now, the two standard theories you always hear are pretty straightforward. First, political fear. Descartes himself said that his ideas on physics were already causing him enough trouble with the authorities. If he started talking about morality, he'd never have a moment's peace. The second theory? He just ran out of time. He died before he could get to it. And yeah, both of those seem plausible enough, don't they?
Well, here's the thing. When you look a little closer, those easy answers start to fall apart. I mean, fear of controversy might explain why he didn't publish the book, but not why he never even seems to have even written it. And the idea that he ran out of time, that doesn't really work either, because he actually published books about applying his morality before he'd even laid out the core principles. That's kind of like publishing a cookbook without listing the ingredients. All of this tells us the real clues aren't in his biography. They're buried deep within the philosophy itself.
Okay, so let's start digging into the philosophy. Our first major piece of evidence is the impossibly high standard Descartes set for himself, this relentless, all-consuming demand for absolute certainty. See, Descartes wasn't interested in just giving some vague, feel-good advice. No way. He wanted to build a system of morality that had the same logical, undeniable certainty as geometry. He truly believed that just like you can prove a triangle's angles add up to 180 degrees, you could prove, with logic, the right way to act in any situation.
And you can see his journey perfectly right here. Early on, he created this temporary or provisional morality. The first rule was basically keep your head down, obey local laws, and don't cause trouble. But that was just a placeholder, a temporary guide for the road. His final goal, his destination, was a definitive morality, one based not on what society tells you, but on what you can figure out using pure individual reason.
But here's the crock in the foundation. In a private letter, he admitted something absolutely stunning. He said that when it comes to the messy, unpredictable reality of actual human life, we might have to settle for a mediocre science. Mediocre? That's a huge concession coming from a man obsessed with absolute mathematical certainty. And boom, there's our first paradox. The system he built demanded the precision of math, but he privately knew that human affairs, with all our passions, our uncertainties, our unpredictable choices, could never be mapped out so cleanly. The very goal he set for himself was fundamentally at odds with the subject he was trying to study. Wow, for clue number 2. And this one goes right to the very core of his whole philosophy, the famous and famously unsolved mind-body problem. Just think about it for a second. For Descartes, your mind is a non-physical thing, a ghost. Your body is a physical thing, a machine. So how does the ghost operate the machine? How does a decision, which is just a thought, make your arm, which is flesh and bone, actually move? For any moral theory that's based on taking action, this is a pretty critical question you have to answer. His official answer was the pineal gland. He actually proposed that this tiny little structure right in the center of the brain was the bridge. It was the one physical place where the immaterial soul could literally interact with the material body. But, and you can probably see the pattern here, in his private letters, he tells a different story. He told Princess Elisabeth that this connection between mind and body can't truly be understood through pure philosophical reason. Instead, he said, we understand it best just by living, through everyday life and conversations. This is a massive retreat for him. Think about it.
To explain a fundamental part of his system, how a moral choice turns into a physical action, Descartes had to step outside of his own rationalist method and just appeal to common sense. His own method couldn't solve a problem that his method created. That's our second paradox.
Okay, let's move to our third and final clue. And honestly, this is the most profound one of all: the conflict between human freedom and an all-powerful God. So here we have two ideas that Descartes insisted were both completely true, even though they seem to completely contradict each other. On one hand, he passionately believed in human free will. I mean, that's the whole foundation of morality, right? We have to be responsible for our choices. But on the other hand, he believed in an infinitely powerful God who has predetermined every single event for all of time, right down to the tiniest thought that pops into our heads. And he was super explicit about this. He wrote that it's a flat-out contradiction to say that God's power is infinite, but that our will is somehow independent of it. For Descartes, God's control had to be absolute, period.
So do you see the problem? It's a huge one. If every thought I have and every action I take has already been willed by God, in what sense am I the one making a choice? How can there be any real moral responsibility if we're all just actors in a pre-written divine script? It seems like you can have one or the other, but no way can you have both.
So, what have we found? Let's put all the pieces of our investigation together and reach the final verdict on the case of the missing morality. The reason the book was never written wasn't just politics or bad luck. It was because his own philosophy created a series of unsolvable paradoxes at every single turn. First, the certainty problem. He demanded mathematical precision for the messiness of human life. Second, the mind-body problem. He needed to connect the soul and the body, but had to ditch his own rational method to do it. And finally, the big one, the freedom problem. He just couldn't reconcile the human freedom needed for morality with the all-powerful God at the center of his universe.
So the final conclusion we have to draw is this: Descartes' perfect moral science wasn't just unfinished, it was unfinishable. In order to complete it, he would have had to violate the very principles of certainty and rationality that his entire philosophical tree was built on. He had literally painted himself into a philosophical corner. And that leaves us with a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond just Descartes. His struggle really highlights a fundamental tension in philosophy itself. Can any system of pure, cold reason ever fully capture what it means to be human? Maybe the messiness, the contradictions, and the mysteries of our lives can't ever be fully contained in a perfect, logical system. Maybe what makes us human is precisely what pure reason can never, ever quite solve.